Hi, I'm Heather Mason of the Minded Institute.
And I'm Shaura Hall of the Pillarmaya Center.
And I'm thrilled to be coming together with Shaura to deliver our first collaboration on this course that we have co-created called Introduction to Integrative Yoga Therapy Counselling,
which is a person-centered counseling training for one-to-one work, which integrates physiology, somatic awareness, yogic philosophy, and psychology. And we created this training because it was time. And it's a joy to be here.
And I'd also like to say that this training also really comes from love. And I know that that can sound a little bit, for somebody that's often perceived as scientific, a little bit out there, but I really mean it. A deep love of this work, a deep love of Shaura, and a deep love of the potential. I guess you can love something that you imagine in the future. And then just to reiterate, we created this because after years of teaching others, we really saw the need for the integration of embodied, relational, spiritual, physiological, reflective, and inquiry skills, all of that. And that we needed a multifactorial way to understand suffering and human experience. And as I said, we really wanted to work together.
And we know that not everyone will train with either of us, and yet we feel that these things are crucial for all mental health practitioners, body workers, yoga teachers, and we wanted to create something brief to ensure that this work was getting out there. And it will also provide an entry for anybody who's interested to understand our work and hopefully engage in deep personal and professional development. So we wanted to create something that combines our expertise. And we feel that these things are crucial for all mental health practitioners, body workers, yoga teachers. And we wanted to give you a sense of how we work, individually and together. The course is short because we want to get this work out there, and it will also give you a felt sense of how we are, which may provide an entry point for you into any of our longer trainings.
And also this course is complete in itself, right? This is for people who are looking for, I don't want to say just before skills, but are looking for skills and not looking to develop a new profession. And we spent some time as we were joining our forces together to really consider what values we both uphold that were going to be the pillars of this course. So the first thing that we absolutely agree on is that healing is a multifactorial integrative process. And we are drawing on the kosha system, a philosophical model from yoga philosophy that all yoga therapy draws on, which purports that the human being is comprised of 5 interdependent layers. There is the physical layer, and that's everything from how you move to what you eat, to how you sleep, all of it, to physical ailments, the breath layer, and the energy layer. So that can be the spiritual energy we consider, but also just the generalized energy that we think about in society. Like today, I don't have a lot of energy, or I do have a lot of energy. And as well, how we breathe, which has such a profound effect on our overall well-being, something that is increasingly being appreciated, not just by science, but the public at large and mental health professions everywhere in the UK and the US. Then there is the mental layer. And this mental layer within yoga is not the higher mind. It is the mind of our thoughts and patterns, our self-referential thinking. And at the next layer is our wisdom, the part of us that is discerning, that when we tap into it therapeutically, either as a therapist or as an individual receiving therapy, there is insight that can lead to change and transformation. And then finally, and I love this about yoga, is the most internal layer, which is bliss. And essentially the idea is that things can get obscured, but at its base, we are inherently joyous. And I am not, nor is Shaura, trying to take away or undermine the fact that life can be very painful. But it means that we all have this essence and spark that can never be tainted. And that gives hope. So that's something that we agree on. And then we have a lot of other things, but we need to start from there.
I think we both value the meeting place, in this case, between embodied awareness in the relational space. We recognize that reflective skills are central to effective therapeutic practice, and we also have understood through our training journeys that these skills are not necessarily inherent within the person. They have to be cultivated, right? And so this led us to discussing how the practitioner's own state of awareness and their sense of being is really important within the therapeutic world and within the therapeutic work itself. And so there is an important journey to go on, in a way, whereby we as practitioners must start to investigate our own self, to be in this kind of almost like self-experimentation process that helps us to recognize our personal patterns, and how the personal patterns and the conditioning that we've built up over our lives shape us and shape the presence that we hold as therapists. Now, for us to have had some of these discussions and come to the conclusions, we've had to be able to draw on ancient wisdom, on contemporary science. We recognize them both as valuable, and just as you have introduced the koshas, we will further explore in the training the neurological component to some of our therapeutic experience that fits neatly into one of those sheaths, right? So we wouldn't be able to bring these things together and explain them in that way if we weren't drawing from these traditions, the old and the new, the wisdom and the contemporary. And I think it helps us to not only bring something unique into the field, it helps us to ground in what may have been ineffable in the past to help people put it into their effective practice.
Absolutely. And I think everybody knows, if they're listening to this and they have any relationship with the Minded Institute, we place a really strong emphasis on physiological knowledge, neurological knowledge, if it's there. And at the same time, we also recognize when it's not there, that there are things that millennia have taught us that work. And I think in chatting with Shaura, some of the other things that I believe we agree on is that it's important to really listen deeply. So that means even now to each other. That means to all of you who will train with us, to each other, to us, and to approach this work with humility. We both believe that great minds are open and not arrogant. We may know what we know, But I think that both of us are always willing to update our narratives with new information and new insight. And we hope that anybody that would train with us would uphold that same belief and share with us things that we don't know and challenge us so that we can also grow. I think you've kind of already touched on this, Shaura, but basically in the training, everything that arises, the dynamics that you feel, the memories that come up, the sensations in the body, these are all part of the development. They're happening in the training, and I have to deal with them elsewhere. They are inherent in the cultivation of self that the training is aspiring to provide. And also, this therapeutic work is not about imposing solutions. Healing isn't saying, this is what you need to do, especially from a person-centered model, and we both come from a person-centered model. Rather, it's about creating conditions for the individual to understand themselves, to find their own way forward, to find their own sense of meaning, which is really intrinsic in well-being.
One of the things that I would add here is around the importance of challenge. And so we know that the ground we create, the container we create, the therapeutic container, will be threaded in a way through with care, compassion. We are inviting people to be curious and also to have a commitment to inclusive practice. And I think it's important to understand here that challenge is very important. And when people get to know us a little bit more, I think they might be able to see that many of the ways that we create the experience of the training, that they've been influenced by different kind of findings. So I'm thinking in particular here that for our brains to shift and to grow, there needs to be some kind of challenge there. There needs to be something that makes us reach beyond what we've been able to reach before. And so while we are committed to creating these environments that are psychologically and physiologically safe, we recognize that it's important for challenge to be here if we are to work with change and to be able to tap into our self-integrity and accountability. And so there is a quote that actually you told me about, Heather, which was from Aristotle. Do you remember it?
Yeah. So some people argue that there's not evidence he said it, but since it's broadly agreed, I'm going to attribute it to him. And it is that educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And I think that's really true. And what Shaura said is really true. And educating the heart means expanding it, which is not always easy. And if you're on the training, we're not trying to set you up upon a Sisyphusian hill, right? That Sisyphus was that character in ancient Greece. He kept rolling up a rock, and when he gets to the top, it rolled back down. But it's to say that in order to be able to show up for other people, you have to expand how you show up for yourself. And at the same time, both of us are also there for support and warmth. So firstly, the reality is that we live in a world, especially in the UK and many other countries, where loneliness is absolutely rife. I mean, the UK has a minister of loneliness. I'm not sure if that position is filled right now, but that speaks volumes. And it has social prescription, actually referring people into activities. So connection is important. And this training is about building relation with clients, patients, but also with self and with the universe, because these are things that are also important. People are not taking care of themselves. And this work that we're offering, because it's not the counseling skills on their own, just like active listening, developing congruence, paraphrasing, because it's about somatic awareness, because it's about physiological regulation. It helps people not only to reflect, but to see the impact that their behaviors have upon themselves, and to have skills to work with change. And that's the therapist and the client. Suffering seems to continue to grow throughout society. And I know that Shaura prefers to use the language, we need to respond to the fullness of being, and we're not doing this. But as that's occurring, we need something really holistic. And that's where we're showing up together. That's why.
There's something about us responding to the needs in the student groups we're working with, responding to a need that is somewhere in the field around us. And I'm going to slow down a little bit here, just because I think I'm moving into a different aspect of myself. And so we have realized in the process of putting this together that the need we're responding to is something that possibly hasn't been done before. So whilst techniques can be taught and have been taught over the history of counselling and psychotherapy, they may not necessarily have been taught from the inside. So where I come into this is to purport that the internal experience is the only thing really we have any kind of influence over, in a way. And as the world is in trouble, the world has gone the way it's gone, with more and more people being isolated from themselves, from nature, from community, it's clear that the path we're walking on, in a sense, is not bringing any change. Nothing is changing. And so therefore the only thing I can do is take my vision back to my internal worlds and do the work that I want to see out there in the world from inside of myself. And this is one of the places that I stand very firmly in any kind of training course. As far as I'm concerned, we only in a way have this body, this life, this consciousness, and each other. So every time we meet an aspect of ourselves that is uncomfortable, and we meet it with care and compassion and many of the things we've spoken about, something changes inside of us. Our presence as a therapist or a helper shifts as a result of this. And in a way, technique is one thing, and we will teach technique, but the presence of who you are as a therapist is the thing that holds the key, from my perspective, to healing.
I entirely agree. And I want to also add that we are teaching techniques like active listening, congruence, empathy, but we are also teaching spiritual techniques. We are teaching things that are not usually available on counseling or psychotherapy courses, that are at the cutting edge of the overlap between mind-body practice and neuroscience to help you get there. Like, how do you listen more effectively? Right? Do I just tell you to do that? Well, what can you do? So there's going to be that real practical piece in conjunction with that sense of presence, so that it isn't nebulous. I mean, life is nebulous, but we can also bring forward some clarity.
And in a way, I think what we're doing is modeling a way of being. And this is something that can't be taught or even shared in a way. Being with us in this training, perhaps seeing from the inside how we've worked together, how our differences have been used to create something that's new and exciting, rather than to push away what the other brings, and to be with each other in that time. I think it's a modeling a way of being that certainly lives in my heart. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. And for anybody that thinks that Shaura and I are collaborating as colleagues, of course we are. But we chose to deliver this course, to do something special together. So what you are getting is also our bond, which is incredibly deep. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening. And I hope this speaks to you, because this training is going to bring in people for whom this makes sense to.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.